It's funny to hear Jed say that because it wasn't the smartest moment I've ever had. I mean, when an owner comes in after training camp practices and is like, hey, how's the quarterback? And what he means is the starter or the second. And you in irritation go, I don't know, but our third guy's the best. Like, that's not what he wants to hear. So that's why he remembers it very strong. But that was just more, Brock was so good right away with every rep he got. He was always the same. And he only got a couple of them. So it was easy for me to say. Because in his few reps, he was the best. But if you know that for a fact, I mean, then you do what you do right away. But he was the best. But you ease that on. And every time he got a little more reps.
Every time he got a little more reps, he started looking pretty good. He looked pretty good, even in the Super Bowl, and I don't like saying that. All right, this is First Kick Seahawks. The show where we get you ready for the first kick of every play by game day, and sometimes I'm mentally not prepared. I just had a bit of a headache, but I took some ibuprofen. Should be good to go. Today we're going to talk about the takeaways from the 49ers preseason week 1 game. This is important for two reasons. One, because we play the Titans this upcoming Saturday, the 17th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I want to know how we're going to adjust from our previous game. We did pretty well against the Chargers, but this Titans team looks pretty stout. I also want to talk about the 49ers pretty heavily, because they're our rivals, and they just lost a Super Bowl. I love saying that. The 49ers lost the Super Bowl. And how are they looking, right? They just changed some coaches. They're having some player contract problems. They also were really healthy last year up until the Super Bowl. And what type of depth do they have? What are we working with this year? Will we beat them twice? Will we beat them once? Will we lose twice? So please like the video, subscribe to the channel as we get into that. The first thing I want to talk about is the 49ers. The 49ers have a new defensive coordinator replacing still Steve Wilks, who was their defensive coordinator last year after Saleh left. What's most interesting about Nicholas Carl Sorensen is he played in the league for one. He played for the Dolphins partially in 2001, played for the Rams in 2001 and 2002, Jaguars in 2003 to 2006, and then the Cleveland Browns from 2007 to 2010. I believe he was a cornerback or a safety. But of note, he was starting his career as a coach with the Seattle Seahawks from 2013 to 2015. He was the assistant special teams coach. In 2016, he was the assistant defensive backs coach, right? So he did work with the Legion of Boom. And then in 2017 through 2020, he was our secondary coach. So he went through Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn, Chris Richard. He went through it all, right? First going to the Jaguars for 2021 as the special teams coordinator. But then he did end up in San Fran in 2022 following Robert Saleh as a defensive assistant. 2023, he was the defensive passing game specialist and nickels coach. And then 2024, this year, he is their defensive coordinator. So this guy has been around some monsters on the defensive coaching side of the ball. And he specifically worked with the DBs, which was our Legion of Boom era. So that is a pretty good young coach to bring up and put into your coordinator position. There's a lot of potential there, right? Another thing of note is Brian Callahan is the new head coach of the Titans. Brian Callahan has also been around, but it is not nearly as important to us. One thing of note for him is that he was Joe Burrow's offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals the last few years, right? Got them to a Super Bowl as their offensive coordinator. Oftentimes he is highlighted as being the reason that the Bengals were good on offense, not Zach Taylor, their head coach. So things are changing for the Titans in particular. There's also quite a bit of opportunity for the 49ers because they got an upgrade at defensive coordinator, but that's not always a guarantee. So with that in mind, I have some takeaways from that 49ers Titans preseason game. I only watched the first half because chances are a bunch of that depth isn't making the team, and it does not matter as much to us. But when we look at, I'm going to do the Titans first. When we look at the Titans, they start quarterback Will Levis. Last year it was Ryan Tannehill. They drafted Will Levis to take over eventually, and so he has been the starting quarterback. This brings us back to a chart that was drafted by Warren Sapp on Twitter. I almost said X. I'm like, what do I call it? Do I call it Twitter or do I call it X? I don't know what to call it. That was weird. So we're calling it X Twitter. This is the highest rate of incompletions due to inaccurate passes. Deshaun Watson being the worst. 43.9% of his passes were his fault because he was inaccurate. The ball was not getting towards his target. This doesn't include things like throwaways. This isn't batted balls, right? The ball wasn't even getting there. For reference for how important this is, you have Tua Tagovailoa. I can't pronounce that last name, actually. I've never tried out loud. He had a 34.3%, which means 34.3% of the time he was an inaccurate passer. When you get to Brock Purdy last year was the 13th most inaccurate passer of the league. 70.13% of the time he was accurate, which is really good. But his overall was only 13th highest. If you go just a few players after, at 9th, you have Will Levis, who is 70.4. Of course, he didn't play the full season, but this chart is based off of 175 attempts. And he also just didn't have the same unit. He didn't have the same running game. He didn't have the same defense. He didn't have the same receivers, although he does have Calvin Ridley this year, starting at the beginning of the season. He is above Josh Allen, who for a while there was in MVP talks, as well as Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff. And then, look at this. We got ourselves Russell Wilson, who is the 5th most accurate quarterback of 2023, right behind Patrick Mahomes. Kirk Cousins blew out his Achilles. Jake Browning, who is the current backup in Cincinnati, but his head coach is now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. So this is of note with this 22.2% incompletion rating. If Will Levis, who didn't have as good of a coordinator last year, gets up to this percentage, look out. And then most importantly, Geno Smith, 21.6% of the time inaccuracy. That gives us a good 78.4% of the time he was hitting his target accurately. Geno Smith being the most accurate passer of the 2023 season and not paid the highest. That's what's most important about that. If you're curious about this, this thread, I have it posted in the description below. So what's most interesting about this Will Levis accuracy, and then of course the Brock Purdy accuracy ratings, is Will Levis started preseason week 1 versus the 49ers. He played the entire first half, and he was incredibly accurate. He was always getting the ball where it needed to be. He also had really good footwork, and that's one of my takeaways from this game, is that Will Levis was making good decisions, which will be a great challenge for our defenses, particularly the linebackers, because he was picking the 49ers apart in the deep middle area. He was taking shots down the field. They weren't necessarily connecting. That was when Mason Rudolph was playing. I forgot he did play the the final half of the second quarter. Mason Rudolph, formerly from the Steelers. The big thing with Will Levis is the 49ers were playing incredibly undisciplined football, which is another takeaway I had from this game. They had good tackling, but their pursuit angles were all over the place. They were constantly bumping into each other. They were tripping. They were just not getting themselves in positions to succeed, and they spent the entire first half playing cleanup. They were also routinely getting beaten over the top, and you could see these deep passes that should have been completed if it was Tyler Lockett or even DK Metcalf. The 49ers would have been gashed. Granted, they weren't playing their starters, but sometimes you're just a green law away from winning the Super Bowl. So you want good depth, and the defensive backs of the 49ers in particular were found lacking against Will Levis. Another thing of note regarding this is that Titans offensive line is really good. They looked really good against the 49ers. You could see a lot of them setting their pass blocking sets and then only moving backward about a yard, giving Will Levis plenty of time to make his decision throwing. Mason Rudolph was just sitting there all day. And in fact, he was throwing the ball late, which is one of the reasons why he had so many incompletions. Will Levis throwing the ball on time. But their run game, they are getting to the second and third level. They were kicking that 49ers front seven ass. The 49ers were successful stopping the run on plays where they just blitzed right inside the gaps. But there was so much push on any finesse plays and pitches, screen plays, right? That offensive line for the Titans was just absolutely working the 49ers, and they weren't standing much of a chance, which gets to the point of starting running back for the Titans, Tyjae Spears. He looked really good last year running next to Derrick Henry, right? It was kind of like a thunder and lightning type of thing. He definitely has that lightning this year, making good blocks, reading the good blocks and getting up to the second and sometimes even the third level where the safety had to bring him down. So it'll be a good challenge for our defensive linemen to push back against a really good offensive front and then also be able to strip and get into their blocks. Can we tackle Tyjae Spears before he gets to the second level without having to send the whole fleet in there to make up for all the messes? I'm very curious to see how our defensive tackles do against this offensive line. Let's see. A final note for the Titans, other than the fact that they just flat out physical the 49ers, is that they also did it on special teams. The first kickoff of the game went to about the 40 of the other side, right? Actually, no, they went to the 15 of the other side. So to start off the preseason, Will Levis was at the 49ers 15, ran twice in the red zone to get in for a touchdown. But their kickoff unit was blocking really well. And that goes par for the course, because if I remember correctly, last year, the 49ers had one of the worst special teams units in the league. And that tends to be a theme this year, where even on punt returns, the Titans had a punt return where they almost took it all the way to the house. So just back-to-back terrible special teams plays. Great blocking in the new kickoff rules for the Tennessee Titans. Takeaways for the 49ers. This is kind of a twofer. Branden Allen is the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy. Branden Allen has been in the league for a while, so it's not like he's a new rookie straight out of college. But when he's not pressured, he delivers the ball on time. Maybe not the most accurate passer, but he will get the ball there. The problem was he was not in a good position to succeed. The left tackle starting for the 49ers right now is Jaylon Moore. He was drafted by the 49ers in 2021, And Trent Williams currently is in a contract battle. And when he was with the Commanders, he sat because he wanted either a big contract or to be traded. And he was not afraid to sit out the entire season if he needed to. 49ers currently have 2 contract negotiations that they're struggling with. It's Trent Williams, the left tackle, who's old as all hell. And then you have Branden Ayuk, who is fairly young but wants to get paid like a top receiver, and he is not a top receiver. So they could be without 2 of their starters to start the season, but most importantly is Trent Williams, because Jaylon Moore, when he played against the Titans, was getting teed off. He was failing every single snap. He's not keeping his feet moving. He's constantly lunging with his arms, and it was putting Branden Allen in trouble. Last year, what made Brock Purdy so good, it was his impeccable footwork. Some of the best footwork I have ever seen from a starting quarterback. Not the most athletic guy, but if you get the ball out on time, you're probably going to succeed. And if you don't have a left tackle and you have a guy in your face all the time, that starts to get you out of rhythm. It happened to Geno Smith last year, who was the most accurate passer. But you could even see midway through the season, after he had dealt with Abe Lucas and Charles Cross being out for so long, his footwork started getting a little sloppy. He started throwing those interceptions to out routes because his timing was off, right? If Trent Williams doesn't start and Jaylon Moore does start at left tackle, Brock Purdy's going to be in trouble. Not saying he's going to fail, but he's going to have a lot in his plate, in his lap in particular. If Brock Purdy goes down for any reason throughout the season, and we've seen under Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers quarterbacks seem to always get hurt, Branden Allen will come in as the backup quarterback, and he's going to try to pull off a CJ Beathard or a Nick Mullins, and it's probably not going to look pretty, because the reason that the offensive line is failing is going to be the same reason why he will continue to fail. He is inaccurate under pressure. He used to go to a 7-on-7 league. To continue this point, though, their offensive line still looks fairly physical running the ball. Part of that is because Jordan Mason, their second-string running back, who has been around for quite a while, fantasy football fans know him, he looks damn good. I would say he's on par with Tyjae Spears. He just needs to get a ton of starting reps on the offensive side of the ball in the season. And the way that CMC, Christian McCaffrey, has played throughout his career, he often has a habit of getting injured throughout the season. Last year would have been one of only, I think, 2 seasons where he had actually played the entire year. He also played a long offseason. It's highly likely that he's going to tweak something this year, and Jordan Mason is going to get a few starts. The 49ers will not miss him. They'll miss him as far as certain levels of explosiveness, sure, but Jordan Mason is fine. He is a great starting running back for the 49ers if they need him. Other things that of note is that the defense of the 49ers, I cannot iterate this enough, is struggling. They might put it all together this next week and be ready by week 1, but they're giving up a lot of deep passes. 15 to 25-yard drops, balls are going behind them, and some of these wide receivers, they just needed to hang on to the ball because they were wide open and just dropped it. Right? Maybe the Titans need a new catching coach. Get some work on the jugs. But as far as the 49ers defense, the only thing they seem to be good at as far as backups is blitzing and rushing into the hole. So that could just be Nick Sorensen's a good coordinator and knows how to put his guys into position to succeed. But because they're so undisciplined on the field, the 49ers are fumbling all over themselves. And there's only so much you can do with play calling if your guys can't actually execute the play on the field in basic manners. This is something that they're going to have to clean up by week 1. They can clean it up, but if they are not ready, it is very likely that they're going to not succeed at the beginning of the season unless it's on the backs of their offense. They were just getting out-physicaled. That's my general take. is that on both sides of the ball, particularly in trenches, the 49ers were getting worked. Without their starters there, the Titans were just rolling all over them. And that was some number ones versus the number twos. I get that. But we just saw with the Seahawks versus the Chargers, our number twos looked great. And they looked disciplined. And so there's going to be lots of situations throughout the season where you might lose a Fred Warner. Can your guy play disciplined football, or are they going to fall apart? And there's a lot of indications right now that the 49ers have really good talent up here and then really bad talent underneath. One of the viewers commented earlier today that the way he would prefer to build teams is 80% of your cap goes to a few good players and then the rest are rookies and free agents. I disagree with that. I would rather have a ton of the cap, of course, go to blue chip players, but then you try to keep as many B-level players as possible. Don't overpay for somebody you can't afford, because chances are they're going to get injured and then your backup needs to be good. And if you don't have good backups that cannot start, your season is over. It doesn't matter how many blue chip players you have. So those are my takeaways from the 49ers-Titans game. It's going to be important to see particularly how the 49ers bounce back. Can they play disciplined football? And then 2, the Seahawks. Can they make the Titans look like they're getting bullied? Who just bullied the 49ers. If the Seahawks can get in the faces of the Titans and show them that we are the more physical team and that it doesn't matter if you run at us, we're going to crush you. See if we can't get Will Levis out of his form and inaccurate, or even if he is inaccurate, we saw today in camp, they kept throwing passes to Calvin Ridley and then Reek Woolen would pick it off or swat it away. If we can shut down this offense and be more physical than them on defense, we are going to win. And it's going to be a good indicator of how we are being prepared in camp, especially compared to our rivals in the NFC West. So thank you all for being here. Please like the video and subscribe to First Kick Seahawks. We're getting ready for the Saturday game against the Titans. I am excited for this one, and I will catch you all around.